videography, and I am a reporter for the internationally known Gates Mills Pink Sheet. I'm so glad you all could come this evening, and I'm very pleased and proud to say that I was able to contact Dr. Prentiss Baldwin, and he has graciously agreed to join us this evening to tell us about his advancement in bird banding. Round of applause for Dr. Baldwin. For Dr. Baldwin, I have to say that when I sent you that chirp to see if you could join us this evening, I really didn't think you were going to be able to make it.
Diane, I have been resting peacefully for a long, long time. And when I heard that chirp come in and you invited me to Gates Mills, and then on top of that, the Gates Mills Improvement Society annual meeting to talk about my fascination of birds, I could barely contain my excitement. So yeah, I said yes, and here I am, so let's get started.
Oh, well, alrighty then. Why don't you have a seat, Dr. Baldwin? And tell us about you and how you initially got interested in bird banding.
I was born in Cleveland in 1868, and my father, Charles Baldwin, was a judge for the Circuit Court of Appeals, and he not only was known for his law practice, but also for his many writings regarding archaeology and general science. And his interest definitely inspired me. And I started at a very early age collecting birds and eggs pretty extensively. At age 18, I was very honored to be invited by a very well-known geologist on 3 major expeditions. The first was to Muir Glacier in Alaska. The other was the Snake River connecting Yellowstone to Oregon. And the last was Europe and studying the mineral deposits left behind by the glaciers. I could not get enough of this. I kept studying the natural science. I couldn't get enough of it. And this was all after I had already graduated from Dartmouth with a BA, an MA, and a doctorate of science. I just couldn't stop. I needed to know more.
Well, you were so interested in geology, but you didn't pursue that as a career, am I right?
That's correct. Even though my father was very aware of my deep interest in general science, he persuaded me not to follow that career path for a lack of financial opportunity. So I did take up law and became the first member of the graduating class from West Reserve Law School.
Wow, that's impressive. So how long did you practice law?
I practiced law for 6 years, and then in 1900, my health started to fail. So I decided that I would resign from practicing law, but I continued very actively in the business world, and I helped to form the Williamson Company, which was a very successful manufacturer of valve stems. And at one time, we had the tallest building on Cleveland Public Square.
So when did you move to Gates Mills?
Oh boy, I was hoping you were going to ask this. In 1899, I married my sweetheart, Lillian Converse Hannah. And we not only loved each other, but we also loved Mother Nature. And when we had an opportunity to buy a 450-acre farm at the top of Old Mill, we jumped on it. And we named our farm Hillcrest.
Hillcrest. So tell us more about your life in Gates Mills.
Well, between June and October of every year, we would live in Gates Mills, but with the exception of every August, we would travel to Massachusetts. The rest of the year, we lived in our Wade Park, Cleveland address, and then towards the end of each winter, we would get away and go down to Thomasville, Georgia. Lillian and I were infatuated with New England architecture, and we just felt so fortunate that our home in Gates Mills shared that style. We joined a few years later, we joined families within the village, and we formed the Maple Leaf Land Company, and we literally purchased the village of Gates Mills. The problem that we had was the housing stock was so dilapidated and disintegrating from the Halsey Gates era that they had to be replaced. And Lillian and I felt so very fortunate that we were able to persuade everyone to go with the New England style of the new homes. So we actually brought a little bit of New England to Gates Mills.
Well, I'm glad about that, because it is my favorite architecture style.
Oh, mine too.
So, the English sparrow. You worked diligently to rid this area of that bird. Why was that?
I learned early on in my field while I was banding birds in the field, that there were three main enemies of the native bird. And one was the house cat, another was the red squirrel, and third was the English sparrow, or maybe better known as the house sparrow. The English sparrow was brought to the United States in 1851 with the goal of eradicating the caterpillar problem that was devastating what was the species of the tree? The elm tree in New York City. The big problem came from these birds overpopulating. I mean, they exploded, and they really threatened the native birds extensively.
So how did you solve that problem?
In 1913, I began a very diligent campaign to fight these invasive house sparrows. And while on the farm in Gates Mills, I utilized what was known as the government sparrow trap, which literally caught the bird alive. Now, what I'm about to say I know is pretty harsh, but I cannot stress enough how bad these invasive sparrows were to the native birds. So I caught a very large number of the house sparrows, and they were all destroyed. As the population of the house sparrow declined, we were very satisfied to learn that the native bird population had increased.
So how and why did you begin bird banding?
I learned of the American Bird Banding Association, and I became pretty fascinated with the trap that I acquired. As the sparrow population decreased, I found that these traps were almost like a resort for the native bird. And so I was able to not only band nestlings, but now I had access to live, healthy adult birds. And it then dawned on me that, wow, this has a lot of potential, that if we were to expand this and trap, many more adult birds and band them, the real joy or fascination will be when these birds migrate and they come back. And that would give us a lot of reading on what they went through.
So you were not credited for originating bird banding, but certainly the advancement of the subject. Tell us about the advancements that you are credited for in your 25 years of research.
Well, I never made a point of banding large numbers of birds just for the sake of breaking a record. Instead, what I was hoping to do was study birds that had already been handled and learn a little bit more about injuries that they had sustained, and even any notation about the molt process, which is when the bird loses their old feathers and gains new ones. Eventually, we were able to study large quantities of birds and study their behavior, and really learned a lot about the migration phenomena, territorial establishments, social patterns, and even nesting behavior of various sorts. I have to say that I feel very, very proud of the 25 years that I did study birds extensively and banding birds on our Gates Mills farm. the 21,685 birds representing 80 species had been banded, and over half of those were house wrens. And then I was also able to band birds in our Thomasville, Georgia address. So from both locations, I was able to band over 25,000 individuals.
That's amazing. That's a lot of birds. So 25,000 birds, 80 species, and more than half of them were your favorite, right?
Loved it.
Well, throughout the city of Cleveland and the state of Ohio, your name was very much associated with conservation. Tell us what you believed in so passionately that gave you that reputation.
I constantly fought against the cutting of underbrush in state parks, and, well, I should say city parks, and then also the walling off of the city streams that pretty much made it extremely difficult for the animals to even go down for a drink. I was an advocate for protecting birds, and I did this by helping to educate humans, fellow humans, that birds play a very significant part in our own survival. Birds are pollinators, and they pollinate up to 5% of the food and medicine that benefit humans. Birds consume insects that would normally decimate agricultural crops, vegetation, and gardens. Birds consume 500 tons of insects per year. And they also disperse seeds that allow new plants to be planted in new areas. Having said all that, my biggest challenge was fighting for the protection of hawks and owls, and I dedicated a solid 2 years on that program.
I don't understand. Protection of hawks and owls, were they endangered?
The U.S. Department of Agriculture had submitted a report indicating that farmers were losing 5,000 poultry per year to hawks and owls. So a bounty was placed on their lives to completely eradicate the hawks and the owls. And Ohio was one of the states that, many states that enacted the hawk and owl bounty. The bounty paid ranged from 20 cents to 50 cents per bird, and over the 18 months that this law was enacted, over 128,000 hawks and owls were killed. Fortunately, through a combination of my past legal experience and also all the relationships that I was able to establish with very influential people throughout the state, we had a very successful campaign to repeal the bounty law. And prior to that, many farmers and sportsman organizations were very much against conservation. After this, they felt very educated, and many of them came over to the conservation side.
That's quite an accomplishment. It's hard to change minds sometimes. So tell us about your fascination with your favorite bird, the house wren.
Oh, it didn't take long. So in 1919, I wrote a paper with illustrations of a box and a trap door. And this gave me the opportunity to successfully band not only wrens, but also bluebirds. Eventually, I erected over hundreds of these boxes on my farm and adjacent farms, all within about a mile of my home. And this allowed me to analyze on a daily basis the bird activities of many different species. With the house wren, they had a very interesting characteristic, and that was that they had a prevalence of mating with multiple individuals. So I wrote a paper entitled The Marriage of the House Wren. And I needed to identify individuals, and I studied those individuals exactly, and then also had to make notes of any intimate details. Yeah, let's not talk about those. It became very interesting that there was a very definite resemblance between the house wren and humans. And this gave my paper a lot of publicity as it circulated through other newspapers throughout the country.
As you mentioned earlier, your illness kept you from being involved in studying the birds in the field. How did you continue your work if you weren't out in the field?
Well, I hired an assistant, and back then I was very interested in photography and motion pictures. And this assistant was known for his photography of nature. So the two of us decided that we were going to create a motion picture involving the life of a house wren. And over the next 5 years, this idea became very, very popular, and it became obvious that I needed to hire more assistants. And we were developing reels of film that was being spread out to other bird folks, teaching them how to properly band birds, and also any new research methods that we were getting from that. Let me see.
Well, they were like large quality or high quality?
Yes.
Yeah.
So yes, I'm glad that you brought that up. So the quality of our film was very high, and we did. A professor from Western Reserve University, we caught his attention, and he helped us to design a contraption that allowed us to take a motion picture through a microscope, the first of such devices built in the United States. And this was fascinating. This allowed us to study the bird in the egg and make notation of when the first heartbeat was detected and also the first blood circulation. And that led to many, many more very interesting discoveries.
So it sounds like you basically invented the first ultrasound. You eventually built a structure on your farm specifically for your research. Tell us about that.
Well, with all the assistants on my staff, it did become obvious to me that I needed to build a laboratory on my property. And I named this laboratory the Baldwin Bird Research Laboratory. And what we were looking for primarily was studying how temperature affected a healthy incubation. And my nephew, who was very much into physics at the time, suggested that we use a thermal couple, which is a very thin wire that could be easily run over the nest or even under the eggs, and then transmit this information back into the laboratory and be recorded. What we learned from this was how long the mother stayed on the egg and also how long she stayed off the egg would determine a healthy incubation. And that led to a lot of more interesting discoveries. And I have to say the one that really caught my attention was the native birds have a tolerance to extreme environmental temperatures. And this helped to dictate when they decided to migrate, which I thought was so neat.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
So, over the years, how have you been able to keep track of what was going on down here?
Well, I'm going to stop for a moment and just share something with you, okay? When you go to heaven, you're going to soon find that you can still pay attention to everything that you've ever been involved in on earth, and it's a really nice feature. So, as a result, I was able to feel very satisfied that all of the innovations that my team of assistants and myself were able to bring to the subject of bird research, we really moved the subject quite along, and we feel very proud of that.
You should. You should feel proud. Well, because of your dedication to the study of ornithology and conservation, Gates Mills is known as a bird sanctuary. I have a feeling, though, that instead of the cardinal being depicted on our signs, you may have preferred the house wren.
I enjoy that question, thank you, Diane. I have to say that with the 25 years that I spent with really extensive research on birds in my home in Gates Mills, that I'm hoping that I did offer some motivation to the Gates Mills Garden Club in the early 1960s, who decided to adapt or apply the official Gates bird sanctuary to the entire village of Gates Mills. And if that is the case, which I hope it is, but I don't have any proof of that, that meant a lot to me. And much more so than just giving the wren, my friend the wren, some special privileges over the cardinal. Now, having said that, had they decided to choose the bully of the forest, the invasive house sparrow, you would have seen me coming back a lot sooner than now.
Well, I'm sure that there are many of us who are very concerned about the decline of our native birds. In northeastern Ohio alone, many species are threatened or endangered. For example, the warbler and the bobolink and the wood thrush and the scarlet tanager. What suggestions do you have for us that would help stop the population decline of our wonderful birds?
Well, sadly, this is the most important question of them all. And Diane, what we need to do is a better job of helping to educate our fellow humans on how important birds are in our own survival. And we must do a good job of protecting our environment, which in turn helps to provide a healthy bird population. The term bird sanctuary should never be taken for granted. An official bird sanctuary, to thrive, must have food, water, shelter, and safety. And this can be accomplished by taking a portion of your property and planting native plants, and for shelter, planting trees, shrubs, and even cut branch piles. And if you can supply a consistent, reliable source of clean drinking water, that is extremely important. Also keep the house cats in the house. And finally, if you're looking at the options of fertilizing your lawn, please think of, a pesticide or a herbicide kills bugs. And if you're going to kill the bug, what's that going to do to the bird population? I mean, the wildlife is here too. They live here. So we need to do a better job of, being more sensitive to their needs. I guess that's just my opinion. Oh, gee, I didn't realize, I'm way past my resting peacefully bedtime. I gotta go. But wait, before I do though, I want to thank you and all of you for inviting me back to my beloved hometown of the village of Gates Mills. I have thoroughly enjoyed this opportunity to share with you my love of birds, and also I'm hoping that maybe you can learn a few things and take it home with you and help our bird population survive. By all means, please take care of this most beautiful place on earth and enjoy the birds, and I look forward to seeing all of you again, but do not rush it. Thank you.
Dr. Baldwin, it was an honor to have you with us tonight, and many of us knew you just as a man who banded birds, but now we know you were a conservationist, an attorney, and an inventor, and that you played a very important role in the development of Gates Mills, and we thank you for that.
Oh.
Thank you. Based on what Dr. Baldwin has mentioned, we have prepared a list of those things to help our birds, and the list is over there on the table with the birdhouse.
Okay, and I would like to say, knowing Jim as many of us do, I am so impressed that he remembered that entire spiel and did it in a theatrical way. Thank you so much, Jim. We have learned so much. So, enjoy what you're left with, your dessert or whatever, and what are we doing? Would we still have time to bid on the birdhouse over there, or what's the situation?